game with strong themes and with a strong narrative feel. In other words, games that tell stories are probably some of my favorite games, and I know I'm not the only one because you look at the ratings on Board Game Geek and those are some of the most successful games in the last decade or so. The idea that a game could really engage with a theme and tell a story, of course, comes mainly from role-playing games, but role-playing games in turn emerged from board games, so that shows you that the potential was always there. However, when you have a board game that tells a story, you of course have the problem of, but who is managing the fictional world? Who is being the narrator that the players interact with? And sometimes it is one of the players that acts as a sort of dungeon master, like you have, say, traditionally in Hero Quest or in Descent, the first edition. In other cases, the narrator or the world master is completely randomized, like you have in old games like Talisman or Dungeon Quest, which can be fascinating, but the randomness because of that can be incredibly intense. In the last couple of years, we've had, of course, other things. We had the D&D board games like in Castle Ravenloft or Wrath of Ashardalon, where you have some AIs that control the monsters. But to me, the biggest breakthrough has been in games with companion apps, because then you do have a plot, you do have a story that somebody has written, so that the players will unlock, will discover, will unravel as they play, exactly like they would do in a role-playing game, but that entire part is not forced upon a poor player that is fighting against the other players, or who is not really playing, acting only as a narrator. The entire function of the narrator is delegated to the companion app. So now you have the joy of playing cooperatively with all of your friends, not ganging up against a single game master. And at the same time, you have the narrative depth, the non-randomness, you have the structure that you can have in a real story, because the story has been scripted by someone. It's just that that someone is now represented by the AI that allows you to discover and explore the story. Descent, third edition did that, possibly first. I think that was really pioneering. Mansions of Madness, second edition, also used that idea. And finally, we have it in The Lord of the Rings Journey in Middle-earth. Again, a game which is completely cooperative. The players will control characters directly from or inspired by Tolkien's world. We are in the world of the Lord of the Rings, we are in Middle-earth, and we're traveling around, discovering things, fighting against monsters in a completely cooperative way, in a scenario-based way. You launch a companion app that will tell you the initial situation, and then the players will explore the world and discover new things, and the companion app will present you with different challenges, different discoveries. Part of the story is scripted, so the scenarios will always have some key elements. Part of the story is actually procedurally generated, so when it comes to different encounters with monsters, there will be variety there, so you have replay value. Also, you can play the same scenarios with different characters, and they do play differently because of the different weaknesses and strengths that the characters have. The scenarios must be played in a specific order. The campaign system is pretty strict that way. You can't just change the characters as you go. If you start a campaign with a group of characters, then and say you get to the fourth scenario, then you can't play the fourth scenario with other characters, so you have to stick with those. If you want to try different characters, again, you have to start from scenario 1. You can save different campaigns in the app, but again, there isn't a lot of flexibility there, which is, by the way, probably one of the few negatives that I have to mention, which is not that big on a negative because the game is fun. Oh, spoiler for the conclusions. The game is fun, so actually starting a new campaign is not a pain, is not a burden at all, because you get to play a fun game more. Now, before I put all of my conclusions in the introduction, why don't I show you the game and tell you how it works. In order to play the game, the players will need to download the free companion apps. You launch it on your device, and then you can choose to start a new game, load a previous game, have a look at your collection, or check the rules. Now, The game is scenario-based, and the scenarios are interlinked in a campaign. The system, however, is pretty strict, meaning that once you start a campaign with a number and a certain group of heroes, you have to stick with those. You have to play the scenarios in order, and you can't have new heroes join or heroes dropping off during the campaign. If you want to play with different heroes, you have to start a new campaign. Speaking of the characters, each character is represented by a miniature that will go on the board and will indicate the position of the character. Then we have a main card here with a special ability of the character, portrait and name, of course. Very important stats. This is the number of cards that you will draw from your personal deck when you're testing. So when I'm testing my agility with Elena, I draw 2 cards. When I'm testing my wit 3 and my spirit 4. Fear and damage. During the game you will acquire fear cards and damage cards that will simply count as penalties. They don't necessarily have any bad effect yet, but when you have a number of damage cards or fear cards equal to your maximum indicated on your card, it is bad. You have a last chance of surviving, of taking a last stance, but if you don't pass the last stance, when you have, in this case, say 6 or more fear or 4 or more damage, then it's pretty bad. I'll let you figure out, I'll let you imagine what might happen. These fear and damage cards may be face down, in which case they represent generic damage, or they may be face up, which again may actually have no effect, like in this case, but may also have additional effects. This is a system that you may recall from X-Wing, that uses the same idea of damage, which may be generic or particularly intense. Items that will allow you to do different things, say a weapon that will allow me to inflict certain types of damage on the opponent based on how many successes I have. That small icon, very important, indicates success, and this icon here indicates the ability that I use. So when Elena is attacking with a dagger, then she will use her wit to indicate. So when she attacks with a dagger, she'll draw 3 cards to resolve that combat, and she'll try to generate successes, which will then be translated into hits and possibly other effects. Your personal deck really is the heart of the game. A personal deck is made of 3 types of cards. Some basic ones that every character has, some personal ones, Elena has the Elena cards, and then some based on your profession, so you can customize your characters. Some characters will tend to go towards certain professions, like it makes sense because of the way Elena is designed if she's a musician, but she could be something else. So you take these 3 kinds of cards, you take a weakness card that has no effect but to clog your deck, and you shuffle it, and you shuffle it, and you shuffle your deck. The cards can be used for 1 or 2 things. For the written effect, but for that to be available to you, the card needs to be face up in your play area, and that is called prepare. The card is prepared, and you can use its written effect whenever the text applies. Or the cards can be in your deck, and then you're using them for the tests that we mentioned. When you're testing, you draw cards from your deck, and you only look at the top left corner. There are 3 possible outcomes. A card gives you no icons whatsoever, gives you a success icon, which is always, you guessed it, a success, or gives you that leaf symbol that you see here. That leaf symbol means inspiration, which means that symbol may count as a success if you spend an inspiration token, and you'll collect them in various ways during the game. And Elena, for example, is able to give extra inspiration to people around her, so that's pretty neat. So this might or might not be a success. It all depends on whether you have those tokens and you're willing to spend them. So super important, at the beginning of each turn, typically or between turns, I should say, typically you will scout. That is, the companion app will instruct you to scout, that is to take a number of cards from your deck, to look at them, and then to choose where you want to place them, which may be on top of the deck, at the bottom of the deck, or in your personal area. Say, for example, if I want to use this effect, which is very good, I need to prepare the card by placing it in my personal area, but that means that I have removed an awesome success from that deck. Here, similarly, if I want to use that effect, then I'm not getting that double thing. But maybe it's a time where I don't have a lot of those tokens, so that's not as important, then I prefer this thing. So you can have a lot of interesting decisions here. For example, in this case, I decided I want to place that one there, so I know for sure next time I test there is a success there, and I want to place this one here. Or maybe I already have my maximum cards here, I don't want to clog that area, I put it at the bottom. Some other examples of things that may happen. If this is the case, this is some scouting, then I definitely want to place this useless card here at the bottom, and here I'll decide if I want to prepare it or if I want to put it there. There are some abilities that are neat as abilities, and they don't have a success here. So all other things being equal, usually a good idea when you're scouting to prepare them. This way you have the effect and you have removed a card with no testing value from your deck. It's a great idea because you do have randomness, but you have also so many things that you can do. In the long term, you mitigate luck by taking cards here and preparing effects. In the short term, tactically, each turn you get a chance of manipulating your deck a little. I like that a lot, a lot. And so suppose, for example, that we're attacking an enemy, again with the dagger, then we test for her wit, which is 3, and we resolve that attack, and that attack is for certainly one hit, one success. It could be up to 4 if I decide to spend the tokens. Suppose that I decide to spend 1 token, use this one now. My effect, I can hit the enemy twice or inflict 2 successes, so I take 3 hits. The enemy takes 3 hits, and piercing, that means that those damages will go past armor. When you inflict damage, then you simply look at the companion app, you click on the enemy that you're attacking, and you simply enter either effects such as pierce and the number of damage points that you have inflicted. Then typically, alas, the enemy will respond, will do something in return. Now, the game will take place on a modular map that will change from game to game, from scenario to scenario. You simply will set it up based on the instructions given to you by the app, and you place, say, maybe the app tells me to put my hero there. What you see here, by the way, is completely fictional. I made it up so you have absolutely no spoilers. Maybe the app will also tell you to put down these tokens, which are explorer tokens, and very often when you gain them, they turn into inspiration tokens. Maybe the app will tell you that there is somebody on the board that you may want to talk to. There is an interesting person. There are things that are interesting to look at, and so then you're instructed to place search tokens. Maybe there is some bad stuff going on, so actually you're told to add threat tokens. So this would be the general idea. Now, what happens here is that during your turn, each hero can perform 2 actions. The actions may be taken in any order and may be to move, to attack an enemy, or to interact with a token on the board. Not the exploration tokens, those happen automatically. Now, interesting enough, when you take the move action, you can move by 2 spaces, 1, 2, for example. Unusually, for games where moving is an action, you can move 1 space, take another action such as attacking or interacting, and then you can take your second move. So I could do my 1 move, interact here, ask the companion app what happens here, and then if I so desire. do that. And maybe I found a valuable item represented by a card. Maybe I find some other kind of information. Maybe it turns out that I am attacked by monsters, by goblins, by ruffians. And then, well, I move there and I decide, say, to attack. I choose my target, resolve the attack the way I said, and I just say enter the result into the app. Probably take a counter attack. I can also choose to move outside of an area that has monsters in it. However, in that case, I'm provoking an attack of opportunity. There is a way of resolving that. You click the provoke button, then the monsters are attacking you, and you take that attack. Now, usually when you're attacked, you have a chance of negating. So you're told, for example, you may take 2 wounds and 1 fear, but spirit negates, in which case you test your spirit, which again simply means to take a number of cards equal to your stat, equal to the number for that stat, and each success negates damage. And again, this is interesting because you can choose how you want to spread out the negations, or said the other way, when you negate something but not everything, then you decide the type of damage that you can take. Here, for example, wow, if Elena was attacked, she could negate 3 hits, even 4 actually, if she decides to spend that token. That really is the basic idea, because then there are a lot of other things, but they're incredibly situational. So not incredibly, but they do depend on what's going on. There may be special abilities, there may be other actions that are triggered by certain cards and special effects. Striking gives you extra strike, sprinting gives you extra movement. As you go around, the app may instruct you about new lands that are found. And so, for example, as we explore here, we resolve this one. Interacting with an inspiration token is a free action. Oh, look, the app tells us that we gained an inspiration. It also tells us that we found that area there that gets its own little exploration token. And that's pretty much it. Meaning, you will take your turns in which you will scout, perform actions. When all the heroes have taken actions, alas, the darkness starts. There's a phase in which the heroes may move to attack you. Bad stuff can happen. Threat may increase. Threat is a bad thing that happens. If there are threat tokens on the board, the threat meter will move faster. You will lose the game if the threat meter reaches its full extension, if it's full of threat. That is, that means that the threat meter acts as a countdown clock. So if it takes you too long to solve the adventure, to complete the adventure, the threat meter is full, you will lose the game. If a hero fails a last stand because the hero took too much damage or too much fear, typically you will lose the game at the end of that turn. You will win the game if you complete the objectives of the scenario, which are, well, they change on the scenarios, and sometimes you don't even know what they are. You start the adventure investigating something, you discover what it is that you need to do, and then, well, you need to do it. So there is that element of uncertainty and discovery there. So although this idea of games with companion apps that act as game masters, as narrators, is fairly new, you can really see how it is becoming more subtle, more sophisticated as we go. This is pretty much the third game that I can think of that really does that and gives you that sense of adventure and exploration, again, after Descent and Mansions of Madness. Other games do that in a similar way, say, but with the mystery genre this time, because you unlock different clues. But for the sense of an epic span for a world that you discover gradually, for that sense of awe and mystery, meaning again of discovering a mysterious world, then Lord of the Rings, The Journey in Middle-earth, I think, does that perfectly, and you can really see an evolution, almost like Descent and Mansions of Madness, where testing grounds and the subject and the idea really comes to full fruition here. And frankly, with Lord of the Rings, the original story, that sense of exploration, of getting lost in a mysterious world that you discover little by little. That sense of like awe is such an important element of the story, even more so than in other types of intellectual property. When you're exploring a dark dungeon, yes, it's fun that you don't know what's gonna be in the next room or behind the corner, but here the sense that you turn a corner and there's a beautiful majestic valley that opens in front of you, that you are there in awe looking up at trees, or the light that is reflected on a lake, or this really sense that nature is not just a setting that you need so your characters don't float in the void, but it's part of the experience. Well, to me, it's something very important in Tolkien's works, mind you, and also something that a game with a companion app is able to reproduce and to give you at a level of depth and intensity that other systems don't have. And of course, that is precisely what the Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth does. It gives you a level of immersion that I just had not seen in other games before, not even in thematic games. It really gives you the magic, the illusion that you are there, that you are in Middle-earth. It transports you to this fantasy world with a level of vividness that is really hard to find elsewhere. So from the point of view of the theme, to me, this is just another achievement. We moved again to the next stage. From the point of view of gameplay, I like this game very much because actually it departs from the idea that you have in so many other games, inspired by traditional role-playing games, that there's an encounter, you roll a die, try to match the armor value of the opponent, or however else you want to call it. There is that dice-based idea, and you can use game functions to mitigate that. I have a magic sword, I have a bonus here, a bonus there. The level of control, the level of mitigation, the level of interesting decisions that you have here, to me, is higher than I see in other role-playing game inspired games, because there's just so much stuff that you can do with that deck. Every turn as you reset the deck and you decide, and you scout, you decide which cards go where, which gives you interesting decisions about what you can use in terms of the prepared skills, and what you do not have to worry that may come out of the deck. So as you are controlling precisely what you can do, and at the same time you're making decisions about the level of luck that you want to face when you will then draw from the deck, to me that is remarkable. I really felt that it's a system that, although it has randomness, and I like that because of uncertainty, it really feels meritocratic. It really feels like it's a game with deep strategic gameplay that then makes it rewarding for you to play well. You're not just there for the ride, just say like in games like Dungeon Quest or Talisman, where you just see what happens next. You have that element of discovery, but at the same time you feel they've really been rewarded if you made the right choices, if you push your luck at the right moment, at the right opportunity, etc., etc. Crazy things will still happen, and often they do, to people as footsie and Tolkienian as you, and that's great, again, that the game surprises you, but to me it achieves that remarkable balance between strategy and randomness that makes a thematic game really worth playing. It is fun to explore the scenarios. They play very differently from one another, and again, the fact that they also play differently when you play the same scenario with different characters. I wish there was more flexibility in the scenario system, that you can have heroes joining in or drop off the campaign as you go. Maybe scenario 8, and I really would like to see how Bilbo would do there instead of Aragorn, or what Elena would do if she joins a party. I wish I could do that, but you have to start over. But again, it's not that big of a deal because the game is fun to play, so you start the campaign again, maybe new friends, you have the joy of seeing them, learning the system. This is the only negative that I have to mention, but again, it is a small one, because in general what you have here is virtual reality in a box. It is a world in a box. You have a long, epic story with a lot of variety, with a lot of interesting things that happen all the time, interesting decisions to make, really captivating gameplay that incentivizes good decisions, strategic gameplay. So excellent, simply an excellent game. It has all that I want from a thematic game. A lot of theme and a lot of game. And this game does precisely that. Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. A solid experience and a great storytelling game.